An invocation by Pastor Dwayne Williams from Friendship Baptist Church here in Sioux Falls. After the invocation, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'd ask everyone to rise, please.
All who are led, would you please bow? Holy One, we invite your presence to come and to govern your leaders as they make decisions about this city. Give them wisdom. Give them a guarded mind, that they might perform only that which you see fit for this city, O God. Give them wisdom beyond their ability, Lord, that they might choose to do that which will have positive effects upon this city and the inhabitants of this city for all future generations. And Lord, we pray that no present action nor impending derivative resulting from the decisions made here tonight will yield any consequence so negative that it would so adversely affect the good thought, the good intent, the good purpose put forth by this council to provide the natural resource and life-sustaining element water to all present and or future inhabitants of this region. May their efforts be carried out without partiality and without excessive burden. These things we ask in the name of your begotten. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's move along here. Is there any additions or any motions, or is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve, Jameson.
Litz, is there a second?
Second, Litz.
Litz, second. Who made the motion?
Brother Bob.
Jameson, okay, Bob, okay. Further comments on the consent agenda? See no further comments. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Costello?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve the regular agenda?
So moved, Benninger.
Benega, is there a second?
Second, Litz.
Litz? If you go to items 15 and 16, that's one that has to do with the bonding for Lewis and Clark and increasing the water rates. If we could have a motion to put 16 up before 15, I think it'd be a little more orderly as far as we move forward.
So moved, Costello.
Costello moved, Jameson seconded. All in favor of that motion will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no.
Council members Costello?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
That motion is passed. Now we're back to the regular agenda as amended. There's a further discussion of motions. If not, all in favor of approving the regular agenda as amended will vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
Council members Costello?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
All members present voted. The regular agenda has been approved as amended. Item number 8. Oh, yeah, that's right. Anyone that wishes to address the council for a period of 5 minutes may do so at this time. And if you do so, please give your name and your address. So anyone who wishes to address the council for a period of 5 minutes at this time. I see no one coming forward, so we will move into the regular agenda. Item number 8.
Hi, Lori Bossman with the City Finance Office. I have items 8 through 14. Starting with item 8, this is a new 2006-2007 packaged malt beverage license for the new Asian food market, 315 South Grange Avenue. Effective January 1, this applicant previously had packaged liquor, and he's chosen to let that expire and apply for the packaged beer. Item 9 is a new 2007 retail wine license for Janice Rosas Las Toros at 1010 North Minnesota Avenue, also effective January 1. Item 10 is transfer of a 2006 retail liquor license from Rubex Inc., Mad Rock Pub, 431 North Phillips, to Maria Cruz Crespin El Pariso Restaurant, 2401 East 10th Street. Item 11 would be to rescind the 2006-2007 retail malt beverage license, which was issued to Maria Cruz Crespin for El Pariso, and that's as a result of item number 10. Item 12 is a special one-day liquor license for SMG to be operated at the Orpheum Theater on January 20th. And 13 is a request for a Sunday sales license for El Rayad Shriners for the El Rayad Mosque, 510 South Phillips. And the reason for this is that New Year's Eve this year is on a Sunday, and those applicants that do not have Sunday sales would not be able to be open and sell liquor on Sunday, and so they've chosen to apply at this time for Sunday sales. Item 14 are the renewals, but I thought I would see if there were questions first on 8 through 13.
Are there questions of 8 through 13? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and then 14 would be various retail liquor, packaged liquor, and retail wine license renewals for 2007. This would be at various locations in the city of Sioux Falls. These are the last of the renewals, with the exception of one that will come before you the first meeting in January. And just to go over this list, Exhibit C includes those licensees that also were caught in the stings that were held this year. One was in March, and one was held on November 1st. And I do have Lieutenant Vandekamp here with the police department if you have particular questions on the sting. And also the applicants are present for each of these items. A couple other items to note. Under packaged liquor, I have one that is asked to have their application withdrawn. They're simply going to close their business. And that's for R&K Convenience, Inc., R&K Convenience at 3110 North Cliff Avenue. Also, we have management plans that have been submitted for each of these businesses, and no other stipulations other than the underage sales. And those that are listed as pending on this list, which are Gregor's Eastside Liquor, the Food and Fuel, Thrifty Smoke Shop, TC's Mini Mart, and Munchies, have all now gone through the court system. I just found that out late last week from the clerk of court, so they have all been charged and convicted of the underage sales. I guess I can call the applicants up if you wish to talk to them or address any questions you might have on these renewals.
Questions of Lori on item 14, or would there be anyone you wish to call up at this time? Okay. Kevin.
Laurie, 2 weeks ago we discussed what might be the city's recommendation, the administration's recommendation as to how we proceed with these. Does the administration have a recommendation as to whether or not we should renew these licenses or not?
Well, Gail Eisland from the city attorney's office worked on an email today that she sent out to the city council, and she went through the different reasons that a license could not be renewed, and in conclusion, what she states is that the statutes indicate that the legislature would need to make, the decision on these licenses, and that the Secretary of Revenue would actually be the one to revoke the licenses. The city could certainly recommend revocation, but as far as who could actually revoke a license, it would be the Secretary of Revenue. And maybe Gary would want to add a little bit to Gail's comments.
Mr. Mayor, I think it is highly appropriate for the council to call before it businesses that have been caught in a sting in the previous licensing cycle, and let them know that there's concern about that. I can assure you that the police are reviewing every license application to determine whether there are problems. When the administration, city attorney, and police see a problem with a license that we think warrants further council action, we will bring it. None on this list have reached that magnitude yet.
Okay, further questions? Others wish to address council item number 14? Not? Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, as long as we have the applicants here, I guess it would be appropriate that we ask each one of them to come up and address the council with regard to specifically. I understand they all have plans. Some of these plans predate the sting. I guess I'd like to know what it is they intend to do to alleviate the circumstances that led to them being convicted.
Okay, we'll start with the retail liquor then. The first one would be Renchlers, Inc. for Gateway Lounge and Casino, 3408 Gateway Boulevard, and the representative is Jack Renchler.
You guys, I feel horrible
Jack,
about...
Jack, do you want to give your address, your name and address for us,
my name
please?
is
Thanks,
Jack Rentschler Jr. My work address is 3408 Gateway Boulevard. My home address is 6805 Stony Creek Circle. I feel horrible about our business selling to somebody that was underage. You guys, but honestly, I don't know what to say. I mean, we were found guilty in a court of law. We paid our fine. The server who actually served the drink was also fined. She paid her fine, or found guilty. She paid her fine. And in the future, you know, I can't sit here and tell you guys it's not going to happen again, because I'd be lying. You know, we do everything we can to prevent it, but it's a tough business. And I can't tell you it's not going to happen again. You know, we're not perfect. We're not perfect. We do try darn hard, though. We serve a lot of customers. We're sure not the biggest bar in Sioux Falls, but we do serve a lot of customers. And this is hopefully a one-time thing, but I honestly cannot tell you it won't happen again.
Questions of Jack?
Mr. Rentschler, have you ever considered having a policy that you just frankly fire employees who violate the law?
No, ma'am.
Other questions? Okay, thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
All right, then our next one under retail liquor is SRS Inc. for Wild Willie's, 4200 North Cliff Avenue, and the representative is John Herman.
Evening, Mayor, council members. John Herman, 6004 Tecumseh Court, Sioux Falls. I'll basically reiterate what Mr. Rentschler said. Been in business about 25 years. This is the first incident that we have had, caught in a sting or otherwise. In my marketing plan, all of our employees now currently must enroll and successfully complete the state-certified TAM program. We card anybody that is unfamiliar to us that appears to be less than 30 years old. We've tightened up on our IDs that we take. We don't take any green cards, no military IDs, anything looks altered, that type of thing. As Mr. Rentschler stated, I cannot guarantee this will not happen again. We are fallible. We have good retention of our employees. I think they're well trained. They're some of the best in the business.
Questions of John?
I would like to just ask the same question: what is your policy toward employees who violate the law? Do you consider firing them?
It's a consideration. It's taken with due diligence. It's based on other situations that they've had in the past. To just blanket say we will terminate anybody that violates that law, we have not taken that stance yet, no.
Further questions of John? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, our next one then under retail liquor is Shenanigans Pub Inc. for Shenanigans Pub, 4001 West 41st Street, and the representative is Don Rose.
Good evening. Don Rose, 4001 West 41st Street, Empire Mall. I agree with what Jack and John are both saying. With one exception, I will fire the next employee. There won't be a second time. It's a hard deal, no questions asked, but I will fire the next employee, regardless of who it is, gone. But above and beyond that, we've done everything now we had done in the past. The person that was caught in our place was an employee that had been a good employee. You know, it's hard to say that you'd fire an employee, but we've had our one chance. We're not having a second one. So with that said, you know, our employees have all gone through the TAM certification. We've got somebody that's going to be teaching that in case we get a new employee. I don't have to wait till a class runs around through the state and comes every, I think it's 3 months here in the city, and they run with certain locations. We will now train them at a quicker pace. I've been around for 24 years in the Empire Mall. This is our first violation. I don't believe, you know, I agree. I don't think, you know, we all take a chance of risk of serving somebody. It's not purposely. We have a lot of people come through the mall. I think we've done some extra things here. We put people at our doors on our busy nights, on our real busy nights. We do that 4 nights a week now, that we got somebody at the door, and I'll go to 7 if I feel it's necessary to put somebody at the door. We're going to take every extra step, and I know everybody in the city does the same thing. I know there's other people sitting in the room here that don't want to be here because of this thing, and they get an employee that slips up, and that's the bad part. You pay an employee $6 or $7 an hour, $8 an hour, whatever it may be, and they let us down after you think you've got them trained, and they still let you down. And many of your other businesses, many of you people sitting here can say, hey, look, I got somebody that works in my place that doesn't always give me 100%, and the one screw up cost me a contract someplace or cost me. So that's where we're at with it. This plan that I've got here, that's just a kind of a new copy of what I was told by the city. I recently put in that I would cut up an ID that I'd taken a fake ID from somebody. I was told I couldn't do that, so I revised this to say I wouldn't do that. So there was at one point I gave Lori one of these things here that said that, this is our plan, plus it had in there that I'd cut up an ID. We see a lot. I wish I could have brought you tonight. I have a stack about that big. I was told I had to turn those over to the police department that I've taken here in the last 6 months probably, that we've taken at our door away from different people. So we're doing our job. We're trying to do our job, and IDs are being sold at South Dakota State and at Augie, and we're trying to take them away as fast as we can. So with that, I'd answer any questions you may have.
Questions of Don? Thank you, Don.
All right, under packaged liquor for Sidney Epstein, Sid's Crown Liquor Store, 330 South First Avenue. His attorney, Gary Timpson, had mentioned that Sid's daughter would be here tonight, Robbie. I believe that's correct. Is she here? Oh, okay. All right.
We live in St. Louis and I've been living with Sid.
Could you give us your name and address, please?
Paul Damien, 11140 Saucier Drive, St. Louis, Missouri. And I've been in Sioux Falls here steadily for the last year and a half, living with Sid and kind of running the liquor store. I myself am TAM trained in South Dakota. And the employee that made this unfortunate mistake was TAM trained. He carded the individual and just had a mental lapse and did the math wrong and assumed the person was 21. He actually wished the young woman a happy birthday. So he did card her, and we feel bad about the situation. And all of our employees, including myself, are TAM trained, and we'll try our hardest not to let it occur again.
Questions of Paul? Thank you very much. Next.
All right, the next one under packaged liquors for Gilbertson Enterprises, Inc., MX Liquors, 709 South Cliff Avenue, and the representative is Keith Gilbertson. And it doesn't look like Keith is with us. Okay. All right, then the next one is Gregor's Eastside Liquor, Inc., for Gregor's Eastside Liquor, 1614 South Sycamore Avenue, and the owner in this case is Greg Stahl.
Greg Stahl, 1614 South Sycamore Avenue here in Sioux Falls. Just to reiterate what everybody else has said, this hurts. I mean, this is a mark that I never wanted to have in my business. I've been now opening up for the 4th year. First time it's ever happened. I've went through every other of these things just perfect. I think Officer Schultz from the police department came in before we opened and gave us a great training program, and we followed it to the T. I went through the tape and watched my employee take the card, ask for the card, look for the card, read it, and just flat out human error misread it. It's as simple as that. Since then, what I've done and incorporated that everybody read and will read or has read is that the first time that they get caught, they are forgiven because there could be that human error factor that's in there. The second time they're caught, they will be fired. They know that up front. But if they turn around and they do pass a sting, I'm giving a $100 bonus to everybody that passes it. They know they're doing their job if they're carded. If they pass a cigarette sting, they get a $50 bonus because they know they're doing their job and they're carding it, and that's exactly what's supposed to be done here. Human error, how can you do it? It's just nothing you can do about it. You can train till you're blue in the face, and it's still going to happen. But that's what I've incorporated since that time. So, any questions from the council?
Thanks, Greg. Questions?
Yeah, I'm unfamiliar with how these stings operate. So once the sting takes place, they tell you that you passed, or
No, usually an underage person is set in by the police department or whatever officials want to make the sting. They come into the store, they purchase a 6-pack, 12-pack, or whatever, lay it on the counter, and they give them their license, and that person behind the counter has to take it, read it, understand it, that it is a valid driver's license, look at the date of birth, and make their decision whether they're going to sell it or not.
Okay.
Then they walk out the door, and 2 officers walk in and write the ticket and give it to the clerk.
Yeah, but do the police notify you that if you've been successful in
Oh, yeah.
carting the...
Yeah.
they do it right
Over
at
the
that
past
time?
3 years, I've gotten letters from the police department saying they've been successful in the stings and everything
okay.
else. So,
Okay.
yeah, they've been very good in the follow-through.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Further questions? Greg, thank you very much. Next.
All right, the next one under packaged liquor is Manov LLC for Food and Fuel, 100 North Kiwanis Avenue, and that's Manisha Patel.
Manisha Patel, 100 North Kiwanis, Food and Fuel. We are working with police department right now for ID and check IDs, and it's not going to happen again. We will try.
Questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next.
The next one then is Thrifty Smoke Shop, Inc. for the Thrifty Smoke Shop, 5101 West 12th Street, Damian Kane.
Dorian Kane, 5101 West 12th Street is the business address. Same thing, employee made a mistake, asked for the idea, looked at it, had cigarettes on her mind, and made a mistake. Since then, we started with the TAM programming. We're going to send me to a instructor course, so in the future, any new employees we should be able to train. To answer your question, I don't fire them. It's going to be situational. If they sold knowingly, absolutely, no question. In a sting, an honest mistake, I don't feel like it's a mistake that employee is ever going to make again.
Questions? Thank you very much.
All right, then we have Van Hassel, Inc., TC's Mini Mart, 5503 North Cliff Avenue, Dan Vanderberg.
Dan Vandenberg, 5503 North Cliff Avenue is the business. Same as a lot of the other folks. We had a mistake happen, and what I've done to try and correct it is, in the last year, I personally went down and got TAM train instructor certificate, so I'm actually instructor. I have the tapes and the workbooks and everything, so even if I instruct them the first time and they get their card, I can still go back and just say it'd be a good time to review the cassette or the booklets or whatever. That's one thing that I've done personally. The person involved in it had just passed a cigarette sting. We got a letter that said that she had passed it. Since then, with the liquor sting, though, they did sign a promissory note that if they did sell, they would be terminated, so they all know that. So this gal actually was terminated. She was an older gal, long-term employee, great employee, but, you know, she signed the note, and you just, you know, what do you do, you know? So, I don't know.
Questions? Thank you very much.
All right, and then we have WK Suppliers, Inc. for Wolfie's Liquor Spot, 4719 East 26th Street, and the representative is Bill Ringen.
Hi, Bill Ringen, 4719 East 26th Street, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Basically, everything that everybody else has said holds true with us. We do have a policy where the employee who sells to a minor is terminated immediately. All employees need to be TAM certified. That's in place also. One other thing that we are doing is we're basically conducting our own stings where we take people that we know that are 21 of age, but we send them into the store, people that we think should be carded. If those people are not carded, you get 3 strikes and you're out on that deal. If they are carded, the employee is rewarded. So that's how we've tried to keep it more regular, more on their mind.
Questions? Thank you very much.
All right, and then we have under Misty Weirkamp for Munchie, 717 West 11th Street, and Mike Weirkamp will address this item.
Mike Weirkamp, 717 West 11th Street. Everybody's told you pretty much what I've watched over the last 9 years. When I had Misty open up Munchie's convenience store, I'm also a wholesaler in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, under Queen City Wholesale. I directly supply most everybody that you've already talked to. As far as I can go down the list, I think all of them have probably bought in Queen City. I work with Dave Grevelis directly and supply all his shopping carts. And D, you have the question, do you fire him? He's learned that it's probably the worst thing you can do, because you learn by your mistakes. Everybody does. That's how we grow up. He says everybody that's ever been caught, second time, they'll pass every time. Because I asked him on our last one, I said, Dave, what'd you do? He goes, no. He goes, they learn by their mistakes. It's human error. 12,000 people have driven through that stoplight across from our other Munchies down there that has passed every sting that's ever been since we've owned that for the last 3 years. They didn't want to drive through that stoplight. It's human error. I mean, once they did it, you think they did it again? No, they didn't. You know, everybody's tired of paying fines. It cost us $2,000. Our guy that we got caught on this sting had been with us for 2 weeks. I don't know why every time they come in to sting us, you know, someone's only been there for 2 weeks. Anyone else would have passed it with flying colors. And actually, the employee we got, which these people know, we got $7, $8 people, $6. I don't know what they're paying them. That's all you can find out there. It's going to work for you. You don't know what you're going to end up with. The guy that we ended up with now, he doesn't steal from us. Everybody out here, everybody that's talked to you, the worst part of our business is inside theft. So the person we let go, we replaced him with the mom that works for us, who's been tammed. This guy wasn't even tammed because we didn't even have time. Said, let my son give it a whirl. Well, believe it or not, and I'll just tell you the truth, he's an introvert. I think he's scared of his own shadow, but I know he wouldn't steal a dime off the floor from me. So, yeah, let him go. Well, he's intimidated. Part of the TAM program you're going to find out is intimidation. They're scared to ask this gal that's standing there that's gorgeous, made up, and looks like she's 40 years old and she's only 19. You know, he's afraid of her. He's probably never been on a date. So there's a line 6 people deep, and, you know, it's like, God, I got to hurry up. I got to get this thing going, and he just doesn't even know where he's at. He makes a mistake. Human error. That's all I got to say. We all got programs from day one, 50 days. We've never not passed a cigarette sting. It's a minor deal. We have nothing to lose. I'm in the cigarette business, and that's my main deal. It's like you have to pass these things. Every Halloween, every basketball tournament, every time St. Patrick's Day, we put up notices. There's going to be a sting. I don't even know if there's going to be one. I put one there anyway. It's big. It's red. We change colors. Card. I mean, I work with all these people. It's human error. We can't be there 24/7, and I think that's what everybody's always said. I think if any one of us were personally behind a counter and we got stung, I think you should take their license away. But we paid the fine. I know I've talked with Carol Logan, who I deal with Queen City, the head of the Department of Revenue, who's going to tell you that if we get 3 in 2 years, we lose our license for 14 days. You know, no one wants to lose their business for 14 days. You know, we might as well just, what, take a vacation or whatever. We all know that. Everybody makes mistakes. That's where it's at. Any questions?
Questions? Thank you very much, Mike.
Okay, that's the end of the list.
Questions of Lori?
Just one question. I don't remember seeing this many over-the-counter drink sales being sting caught.
Oh, that's a good point, and we could have Lieutenant Vandekamp address that. Generally, they do go to the packaged businesses, the packaged liquor and the packaged beer. On occasion, and he could probably address this better, if they have time in the staff, they do sometimes try to go to the retail businesses. Would you like him to speak to that?
Yes, I'd like to.
Okay. He's here.
Lieutenant Greg Vandekamp, Sioux Falls Police Department. Yes, normally we try to hit all the packaged businesses. The November sting included all 138 packaged businesses. The earlier one in the year, we threw quite a bit of on-sale establishments. That's where you see several of these plans coming up from. Again, it's extremely time-consuming, so we will randomly select those on-sale licenses.
Questions? Agree. Thank you very much. Council discussion or action. Do you want to take? No, we can do one of two things. We can take all of them in one swoop, 8 through 14, or we can take 8 through 13. If you want to take 8 through 14, is that okay, or do you want to separate?
I'd like to move for approval of 8 through 14.
Okay, the motion is to approve items 8 through 14. Is there a second?
Second, Benninga.
Benninga seconded. Comments on that motion? See no further discussion. All in favor of approving items 8 through 14 will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no.
Council members Costello?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benninga?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
All members present voted. Items 8 through 14 have been approved, 8-0. Now, we had a motion earlier on that we're going to take item 16, so item 16 we will take at this time.
Item 16 is a second reading. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, authorizing the issuance of its sales tax revenue bonds in one or more series, authorizing the use of the proceeds thereof to pay the costs of prepaying all or a portion of the city's share of the local costs under the amended and restated commitment agreement dated as of October 1st, 2005, between the city and Lewis and Clark Rural Water Authority and water-funded projects in the capital improvement plan adopted by the City Council on August 7, 2006, pledging a portion of the sales and use tax proceeds of the city to the payment of said sales tax revenue bonds, fixing the terms of such sales tax revenue bonds, authorizing the execution and delivery of one or more supplemental indentures between the city and the First National Bank in Sioux Falls, and authorizing the sale, execution, and delivery of such sales tax revenue bonds.
Gene Rowenhorst, Director of Finance for the City of Sioux Falls. This is the ordinance which you've had in front of you for actually quite some period of time, and we've had a lot of presentations on different aspects of it. In my opinion, at least, page 4, the real meat of the ordinance is just above section 3, where it says the sales tax bond shall be in a principal amount not in excess of $70 million plus cost of issuance and debt service reserve funds with terms and subject to the provisions as set forth in the sales tax indenture, but the average interest rate yield on the sales tax bond shall not exceed 8% per annum and shall not mature later than 30 years from the date of issue. I think that's the meat of it. Gives you the terms and conditions. There's a lot more to it. We have a lot of people here tonight. We're not. It's not our plan to do any presentations tonight, but we do have every one of the team members available that's working on this, and we're prepared to ask any and all, or answer any and all questions that the council might have.
Questions of Gene on item number 16? Okay.
Yeah, Gene, where does it say about deferral of the interest for 6 years?
I don't know that that's actually, it's not part of this, actually part of this ordinance.
I guess I would wonder why it's not part of it.
Because that is actually part of the structuring of the ordinance. Why don't we let Wally talk to you?
Wally, you want to?
Good evening. I'm Walter Parkins with Doherty & Company, the financial advisor for the transaction. In answer to that question, the deferral of the interest is the recommended financing plan, but it is not cast in the form of the resolution. The resolution merely authorizes the issuance of bonds for up to 30 years. So if for some reason market conditions were changed, we would have some latitude in changing that. Probably not, we would not recommend changing the 6-year deferral, but we might do a 28-year bond or something like that, depending on where the market is. But as long as we don't exceed the 30 years, we could defer it for the 6.
Yeah, I guess I'm surprised it wasn't in here because, we have spent so much time talking about that, and then when I was taking a look at this, I just didn't find it at all, and...
Well, I mean, it's just part of the latitude we've retained, yes.
Yes. Okay.
That would be the current expectation, given what it does to water rates.
Further questions?
Part of the input that we've had from other people throughout the community in regards to derivatives and that, and having an open competitive bid versus a negotiated sale, apparently some of the concern comes from a notion that bonds can be flipped in the market, and I use that term very loosely, whereby under a negotiated scenario, your company could negotiate with a third party to purchase our bonds and then turn around and repurchase, your company would repurchase those bonds from that third party. Would you consider that a breach of fiduciary responsibility on your company's part? And secondly, do you or is your company considering such a notion?
Well, first off, we haven't even thought about that, number one. Number two, the negotiated process would be somewhat different, I think, than you maybe appreciate, okay? If we make a decision to negotiate the bonds, we would send out requests for proposals to numerous underwriters we believe qualified to buy and resell the bonds, okay? So there would be a contest, an RFP. People would respond. We'd pick out the 4 or 5 best ones and interview them. We would do it based on distribution capacity of the firm, their history in dealing with South Dakota bonds particularly, the ability of them to bring a favorable fee for underwriting the bonds. But I understand the question. It's just I'm not familiar with that have ever happened, because this is a very competitive business. And for example, if the Dane firm won the bid, they would have no interest in selling them to Doherty, who could then resell them at a better rate, because they would want to take that profit themselves. I mean, that would be just taking money out of their pocket, which, they'd have no reason to give us. And over and above the fact that I don't think it'd be ethical to do it, it's just not likely to happen in a practical sense.
Further questions?
Mr. Parkins, I realize from day one that you indicated that if we were going to do this bond issue right now, that your recommendation would be very much an open competitive bid and no derivatives. But I realize market conditions could change by this spring. And so this is my question. How different would the yield curve need to be in market conditions this spring to justify using a negotiated bid and any derivatives?
I don't think the yield curve affects the decision to go competitive or negotiated. The yield curve would indicate whether or not it would be in the city's interest to do a derivative. Okay?
Would you repeat that, please?
Okay. In the decision to do a negotiated sale or a competitive sale would be market conditions, not the yield curve. In other words, right now, the municipal calendar is getting very full. That means there's a lot of people that want to sell bonds. Okay? This is no different than home financing. Okay? For a long time, everybody wanted to refinance their mortgage because they had an 8% mortgage and a 6% market, so everybody's rushing to do a refinancing. Okay? So there's a lot more mortgages being done than just people buying new homes. Similar thing is happening now in the bond market, because besides the Sioux Falls and other people of this world who have municipal projects that are going into construction and they want to do improvements to the city, you've got a bunch of people that sold bonds 7, 8 years ago at much higher interest rates that are doing refundings to save money. So there's getting to be a crowd, as we would call it, in the municipal business. And if that supply gets
too heavy, the competitive is not as good a place to sell bonds as negotiated. Okay? So the market conditions, or if there was a great deal of uncertainty about something, because we live in a pretty volatile world right now between international events and monetary policy, that would dictate more the competitive versus negotiated. The steepness of the yield curve right now, we actually have an inverted curve. In other words, 5-year treasuries have a higher interest rate on them than 30-year treasuries. Those inversions typically don't last too long. Okay? So if something would happen, for example, if the Fed decided to lower short-term interest rates, okay? So the short-term side came down, that would probably put pressure on the long end to go up, because people would be concerned that by dropping the current short-term rate, they would be inducing inflation into the economy, so they'd want a longer rate, higher, longer rate, which would give us a steeper yield curve. And in a steep yield curve is when a simple derivative to swap short-term rates to long-term rates would potentially save the city a bunch of money.
Further questions of Wally? Others that wish to address the council on item number 16? Are there others that wish to address the council on item 16?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I am Bob O'Connell, Public Affairs and Communications Director of the Sioux Falls Area Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber strongly supports the Lewis and Clark project and the consultant's proposed bond financing plan. The Chamber has had a priority plank in its annual plan to fully fund the Lewis and Clark project. It would be a powerful economic tool to be able to state that water is not an issue when locating new business here in Sioux Falls or for living here. The Chamber supports the prepayment of the city's portion of the project as proposed by the consultant. The Chamber endorses the consultant's recommendation for the 6-year principal deferral, the 30-year bond term to repay, which could be repaid after 10 years for flexibility. That will allow for those who use the water in the future to help pay for it. Further, the Chamber believes the rate increase plan as proposed is reflective of the water utilization by the various users and is reasonable and fair. And finally, we think it would send a very important signal to our partner towns and assist in a congressional delegation with federal funding if there was a unanimous vote on this project and bond. Thank you.
Questions?
Yeah, Bob, I was just wondering, I understand that the advocates of the way the bond proposal is right now spoke to the chamber committees and so forth.
Yes.
Yes. Were there other opposing views presented at those meetings?
No.
Questions? Thank you. Others that wish to address the council on item 16?
I'm Jerry Noonan. I live at 214 North Duluth here in Sioux Falls, and I'm a certified public accountant who's, as you well know, spent a little time on financial statements for the city. I'm not concerned about water at all. Everybody wants water. I'm more concerned about exactly the cost-sharing concept that we have going within the agreements themselves. And the bonds that we're issuing, first of all, the water, as you well know, we are just buying a water right. We do not have any equitable interest in the water system, the Lewis and Clark water system. So we capitalize on our financial statements. The money you put to date has been capitalized as an intangible asset. So I'm wondering, with the $72 million or the $60 million additional bonds that you're issuing, whether or not this particular council has taken a look at what happens if the federal people do not come up with their $326 million commitment. And we're dealing with an entity then that basically under accounting definitions would be considered insolvent. Does not have its ability to meet its current obligations as they come due. So I think this council should have some type of a contingency plan built around the aspect that Lewis and Clark may not be able to deliver fully on its commitments. And we've also obligated the second penny sales tax to back up this particular flow of revenue, which we don't have yet because obviously there's no water here at this particular point. So I question whether or not in 2012 Lewis and Clark can meet all of its fiscal commitments even with the dollars and cents that the city will be throwing into their particular coffers. And so I don't know whether you've looked at that particular issue down the road 5 years from now, whether or not we in fact will have treated water in the city of Sioux Falls. And I'm sure the mayor, you've probably spent maybe some time on that, I hope. But we obviously acknowledge in the agreement itself that if the feds don't pick it up, it says that the members will pick it up. So we've acknowledged that in the documents and agreements themselves. So it seems to me that one way or the other you need to address that, because if the feds do not meet their commitment of $326 million plus, you've got an issue that you're going to have to take a look at to finish the project. Thank you.
I appreciate it, Jerry. We'll have Kevin here come up here and talk on that. Thank you very much, Jerry.
Good evening, Kevin Smith with the Office of Public Works. Our cost share was established through the federal authorization. In addition, the cost for the expanded capacity are 100% the City of Sioux Falls costs. And as far as addressing what are we going to do if, that's one of the reasons we're considering prepayment, or we've requested prepayment, as have many other members of the Lewis and Clark Rural Water System. It is critical that water reach us by 2012, and these are costs we're committed to paying to Lewis and Clark through the amended and restated commitment agreement. What we're really discussing is how are we going to pay for those costs. And no, we cannot guarantee what the federal funding is going to be each year, but I think it's safe to say that we've looked at what federal funding has been in the past and simply paying as you go and hoping the federal government comes through is not working. That's one of the primary reasons we're looking at prepayment, is to do everything within our power to ensure that water does get here by 2012. Yes, we still need the federal government to come through annually with funding, but this will certainly get us many steps down the road to ensuring that water does get here by 2012. I don't know if that addresses Mr. Noonan's comments, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions of Kevin? Thank you, Kevin. Others that wish to address the council on item number 16? Not? Go ahead, Pat.
I see Brent's is...
We got one more. We got another person here. Go ahead, Jeff.
Mayor and City Council, I'm Jeff Parker, resident at 3003 South West Oak Street in Sioux Falls, also a businessman at Parker Transfer, so I'm not only a residential user but a commercial user. And in deference to my good friend Jerry Noonan, I am concerned about water. Of the natural calamities that we have in South Dakota, this is one that we can control, and we are committed to it. We can't think twice about the decision we made back then to commit to being a part of Lewis and Clark. We need to go forward now. I would ask that each of you, the council, now vote in favor of the ordinances as they are. You don't need any second guessing of the professional counsel that you have here today guiding you on what the plans are for the financing vehicle. Let that decision be made by them at the time that the bonds are let. Let them weigh the risk to the reward of the interest rate, and that determine the vehicle that is used. Please pass the ordinances as they're written.
Thank you. Questions of Jeff? Okay, thank you. Others that wish to address the council on item number 16? Not. Is there council discussion on item number 16?
I see Brent Olson from First National Bank is here, and since they're our bond trustee, I was wondering if he would step forward and maybe explain First National Bank's role in all this.
Mayor, members of the council, my name is Bert Olson, 107 East St. Andrews Drive in Sioux Falls. I have worked with the city since 1988 in the corporate trust division of the First National Bank in Sioux Falls as trustee for all of your sales tax bond issues. When you put together a financing plan, the bank in its trustee capacity receives the proceeds from the sale of the bonds. With the consultation of the finance office from the city, we invest those proceeds during the construction period, pay those construction costs out, and then immediately begin to collect repayments from the city that pay the debt service on the bonds, whether they be interest or principal payments. That process is laid out in the legal documents. There's a trust indenture that bond counsel, in this case it's Betsy Abbey, lays out the investments that are allowed. That's according to South Dakota state statute. I think it's section 456, and we recommend or offer alternatives, and the city directs us to invest.
Questions of Bert?
What will your role be if the council takes the advice of our advisors and we were to involve in some sort of interest rate swap or there? How will you be involved in that?
That would be an agreement whereby the city would have an interest rate swap and potentially the bank would make a payment and receive a payment based on the interest rate swap that was put in place. We would basically collect a payment each month and pay out an amount each month.
Further questions of Bert? Thank you very much. Okay. Others wish to address council item number 16? Is there council discussion or action on item number 16?
I move for approval.
Costello moves. Is there a second?
Second, Litz.
Litz seconds. Further comments? Sir.
Mr. Mayor, I have an amendment, the purpose of which is to get rid of the derivatives in the ordinance. Here's the amendment language. I move to amend the bond ordinance to strike Section 3E from the bond ordinance, which authorizes the use of derivatives, collars, floors, and caps.
Okay, that's your motion? You
Yes.
made the motion? Okay, thank you. Is there a second to that motion? Everybody understand the motion?
Brown seconds.
Brown seconds. Okay, further discussion?
Yes. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to just read a few sentences from the Government Finance Officers Association dealing with derivatives. The Governor's Finance Officers Association recommends that state and local officials to be cautious in the use of derivative instruments. A decision whether or not to use derivatives should be made on an informed basis. Training is essential both in evaluating the use of derivatives and in managing their use. So here we have the Government Finance Officers Association saying that, government entities should be very careful in how they use derivatives. The city of Sioux Falls has never used derivatives before, and here we have the largest bond issue in the history of Sioux Falls. I don't think this is a good time for us to experiment with derivatives.
Okay, further questions, comments?
Well, I would note that there's nothing that's been said so far that says that we are going to enter into a derivative. We just want to leave the option available to our advisors who have significant background in municipal bond market. Furthermore, as earlier today, I had distributed to the council a sample policy regarding interest rate swaps that comes from the same GFOA that you just referred to, that we can work on in January and set forth in the form of a resolution that will encompass what we as a council, along with our advisors, feel is appropriate for the city of Sioux Falls. I couldn't agree more that we need to be cautious. Everything that we do regarding this, we need to be cautious on. This is a huge undertaking for the city, but it doesn't say that they don't recommend. It says we should be cautious, and I think that we can, again, with our advisors, put together an appropriate resolution to deal with this issue.
Further comments on the motion to amend? Seeing no further, okay, Kevin.
Well, I'm going to support Kermit's motion, and I ask the rest of the council to do the same. I respect the advice and the everything that this group has done, our financial advisors. I respect their opinion. If I were on a governing board of a private corporation, or perhaps if I was dealing with my own money in this regard, I might very seriously look at what they're suggesting here. But I'm not. I am dealing with the public's money, and I think that calls for an abundance of caution. I am not convinced that the risks associated with these types of financial transactions warrant our getting involved in that. I'll just quote one person. His name is Warren Buffett. I think everybody is familiar with the gentleman with regard to derivatives. He said they're like hell, easy to enter and almost impossible to exit. I would urge you to support the motion to amend.
Okay, further comments? Verna?
I also will be supporting Councilor Stagger's amendment. I too respect what the financial advisors have told us. Gene Rohnhorst has done an excellent job in trying to make me understand this, but at the end of the day, if I can't face a taxpayer in the eye and explain derivatives clearly to them, I just simply can't support this. I liken it to investing for my retirement. We each have to assess our risks, our tolerance for risk, and this just isn't in my tolerance for risk, so I will be supporting Councilor Stagger's amendment, and I hope others will as well.
Further comments on the motion to amend? I see no further comments, so all in favor of the motion to amend, everybody understand this? That would delete the derivatives. Everybody in favor of that motion to delete will vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
Council members Costello?
No.
Jamison?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
No.
Litz?
No.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benninga?
No.
Brown?
Yes.
It's 4-4.
No. That motion has failed. Is there any other motions?
Yes, I have a second amendment here. The purpose of the amendment is to authorize the bond issuance to use competitively bid bonds rather than negotiated. The amendment reads as follows. I move to amend Section 3C to read only as follows, quote, bond purchase agreements or similar agreements will provide for the sale of competitively sold sales tax bonds, end quote.
So your motion is to just put the competitive and get rid of the negotiated?
That's correct, yes.
Everybody understand that motion? That's your motion. Is there a second?
Second, Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh seconded. Okay, go ahead, Kermit.
Well, in our society and our economy, we focus a lot on the free market. We focus a lot of attention on competition. So let's have competition here when it comes to these bonds. Coupled with the fact that the Government Finance Officers Association has issued some kind of warning language here when we talk about negotiated sales. And here's what the Government Finance Officers Association says, quote, furthermore, in negotiated sales, there is concern about the fairness of the selection process and the possibility of higher borrowing costs because of the potential for underwriter selection on the basis of political favoritism rather than merit and cost. There is also the recognition that conflicts of interest may arise because of agreements by and between outside financial professionals involved in the transaction. So here we do have a warning from the Government Finance Officers Association about this. But having read that, once again, let's use competition here to determine the bonds that we're going to be getting.
Further comments on the motion to amend? Bob?
I guess one of the questions is that we're tying their hands if we pass this type of amendment. I think the options ought to be left open, and they are committed to do what's best for the city. And I guess I have to believe that's what they're looking out for, is the city's interest. They have a fiduciary responsibility to do what's best for the city. That's what they were hired for.
Further comments?
I guess I would just like to say a few words about what Bob said. You know, I don't think any of us on this council are really qualified to understand the ins and outs of everything that we're doing here. But that's why we have advisors. We've paid them a significant amount of money for their best thoughts. And these people have significant experience in the state of South Dakota with the city of Sioux Falls. They are local businesses. Many of them are, and have been with us for a long time. And I'm willing and ready to support them in what they feel is in our best interest.
Further comments on the motion to amend? Everybody understand the motion? The motion is to delete, negotiate and delete competitive. Just a second. Dazine.
I'd like to hear what he's
Okay, go ahead. We've had Councilmember Askell. Go ahead.
Betsy Abbey, Lindquist and Venom. Bond Counsel, if you take out the section 3C, you're taking out competitive sales too. You can't just rip that section out, because even if it's a competitive sale, there's original issue discount possibility, because that's how things are sold today. In addition to that, even if it's a competitive sale, they're not necessarily going to buy it at par. They're going to take a discount on it. And so by eliminating C, or changing it as you're proposing, won't allow you to sell the bonds other than at par, which doesn't work today in today's market, at all. And most of the issues right now have original issue discount, but no one's going to buy them at par for making. No one's going to buy these bonds for $100 and not make any money. You know, $1 for $1. I mean, it's saying that nobody gets any commission, and no one's going to bid.
Mr. Mayor, I guess you're reading a lot into this, more into this than I am. What I'm saying here, okay, we amend Section 3C to be bond purchase agreements or similar agreements will provide for the sale of competitively sold sales tax bonds. That's all it's saying.
No, by not allowing you can add the competitively, but by taking away the rest of this paragraph does not allow you to have original issue discount, which is what most of the bonds are sold at today, and you're only allowing the bonds to be sold for par, which no one's going to buy $60 million of bonds and sell them for you and not earn a dime.
Well, once again,
you can say competitive sale,
yeah,
and then leave the rest of this in, but your proposal was to take out the rest of that language. If you add bond purchase agreements, you know, or similar agreements, not negotiated sales or something like that, or just adding competitive sales only, and then leaving in the rest of the paragraph, that could work. What your proposal to take out the rest of it, you'll never sell the bonds.
Might I add that this is an example of what happens when people who don't know what they're doing insert themselves for their professional judgment of our advisors?
well, I guess I would mention what experts are you talking about? You're talking about the person who testified right now. We've also had other people that have come before us and say that we should be doing the competitive bonding rather than doing this negotiated sale of the bonds. So
I guess I'm going by the paid advisors who have a fiduciary responsibility to the city of Sioux Falls.
Okay, Vernon.
Ms. Abbey, could you come to the podium, please? Could you recommend language to handle what Councilor Stagger's intent is?
If you're interested in exact language, I can, if you say the intent of what your intent is, that it's only a competitive sale, and to change C to say competitive sale, if I draft it right now and do it a little off, that's going to end us up with some issues, possibly. I would rather, I can sit down for 10 minutes or 5 minutes and do that, but to stand up in front of you is to put it perfectly. I would rather have it be perfect, and you talk about another issue for a little while, than me wing it and be wrong, because this is subject to referendum and all the other things. So let me sit down.
Mayor, I move for a 5-minute break.
Okay, 5-minute break. This is going to get so screwed up.
experts. We had experts.
Bid on this. We'll be able to bid on it like a general contractor on a
And then we
project
also
that's
had
already
Caldwell. So I mean, we had experts looking. We had experts looking at it. Now, I'm not sure we have the same right now. I mean, no. We just pay them to write it. That doesn't mean take well, that's what you're saying. No, I just think that she's overstating this. I mean, we don't have the deferral interest in there, and we don't have deferral. Yeah, you know, this is. I'm not upset. I'll give you some.
right. I believe you may be breaking a law.
Tamara reminded me that that had been canceled.
Yes. Absolutely.
Just timing?
Here you go. You bet.
It's quite possible we will. It's possible. This is the first time. Okay.
Take this one when I'm done. Every time you move it, the picture gets yep.
That's that city lit stuff, you know?
Yep, by a low bid.
You're right.
Somebody could go.
Did? Somewhat.
M&M's at the trail mix. Oh, Samara has the trail mix. We just catch wind up on TV watching football. That's our deal. We're in a 5-minute meeting break. They got a run defense?
Yes.
Where'd you find the trail mix?
She's got some door where you come in her office.
Mayor, did you want some munchies?
In a minute, so you go ready to go.
Let me tell him 30 seconds.
Okay.
The meeting will start in 30 seconds.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll be back in session here. Go ahead.
Based on what I think you want the intent of your amendment to read, I would be adding in section 3 a new F instead of the existing F and make the existing F a G. And a very short sentence saying the sales tax bonds will only be sold by a competitive sale, semicolon, and.
Okay.
Do you want to withdraw your previous motion?
Yes.
Is that okay with you, Kevin? Okay, that has been withdrawn. Now, do you want to make another motion?
I'm going to, let's see, I would still go ahead and, our original amendment is still valid, is that right? But then we're just adding on years to 3, to make it 3F, or, okay.
No, it would be, your amendment completely goes away.
Okay, my amendment goes away.
Completely goes away.
Well, you just withdrew that.
Yeah.
Kevin
And
seconded that.
so you wouldn't be changing C at all. You would just be adding substituting a new F and then making the old F G.
Okay. Can you give that to our?
I talked to Deb. and-
Okay, so they have that now. Okay, so I move that.
So that's your new amendment. Okay, we withdrew
Yes.
the other one, and okay, your new amendment, everybody understand what that amendment is? Basically, it's the same thing, it's just the wording's a little different.
Provide for competitive bidding, that's what
Right.
we want.
Is there a second then?
Second.
Okay, the motion been made and seconded. Further comments, Bob?
A question then, I would like to ask bond counsel if they would recommend that amendment.
I'm not an underwriter. I used to be a financial advisor for municipal bonds, but I haven't done that in 20 years. So I'm not really the right person to ask. But I am going to say is that I don't remember in working as a financial advisor for 5 years or for, and we only did competitive sales at that place, or mostly competitive sales, or as bond counsel for 20 years. I've never seen it in a resolution that it can only be sold by competitive sale. And that's why it wasn't addressed in the original draft.
Thank you.
Further comments on the motion to amend? Everybody understands the motion to amend?
Walter, could you step up, please?
Yes, sir.
Have you run across similar wording that has eliminated negotiated bids in your experience?
Never.
In how many years?
Between being bond counsel and underwriter, about 32.
And is there any way that you can quantify the potential cost to the city of Sioux Falls?
It would be wholly dependent on the market at the time. I mean,
Yep.
there's just, I mean,
Would it be safe to say that it has potential to cost the city of Sioux Falls
has the potential to cost money, yes.
half a point of interest rate? Or, I mean, any way to quantify it?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be elusive, but I mean, it's just not possible to quantify it. It's going to be driven by the market at the time.
And also, just asking kind of a similar question, doing the negotiated, what kind of additional cost will that be over competitive? We don't know.
It would, we don't know, but we would do the calculations to make sure that the true interest cost to the city was less with the negotiated than with the competitive. You can't just look at interest rates, you can't just look at cost of issuance. You have to run a true interest cost to see what the total all-in cost is.
But that's what I would assume we would be doing when we got the competitive bids back. We'd be taking a look at every one of them to see which one's the very best for us.
Absolutely, but we would not have the option of doing a negotiated bid.
Further comments on the motion to amend? Everybody understand the motion to amend? Basically, what you're doing is you're taking out negotiation, you're leaving in competitive. That's the motion before us. So, see no further comments. All in favor of that motion will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no.
Councilmember Costello?
No.
Jamison?
No.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
No.
Litz?
No.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benninga?
No.
Brown?
Yes.
Fails.
That motion has failed. Further discussion? Motion?
Yes. Mr. Mayor, I have a another amendment. The purpose of this amendment is to authorize the bond issuance for 20 years with no deferred principal payments, and in the process save the city taxpayers $21.6 million. Here's the amendment language. I move to amend the bond ordinance by adding additional language at the end of Section 2 to read as follows. Sales tax bonds issued pursuant to this ordinance shall be amortized in level installments of principal and interest over the 20-year life of the bonds without deferral of any portion of the principal balance.
Okay, that's your motion. Is there a second to that motion? That motion dies for lack of a second. Further discussion, motions?
And then the last amendment I have for this evening is an amendment to authorize the bond issuance for 20 years with 6 years deferred principal and save the city taxpayers $15.8 million. This is the way the amendment reads. I move to amend the last line of Section 2 of the bond ordinance to read, quote, shall not mature later than 20 years from the date of issuance, end quote.
Okay, everybody understand that motion? Is that your motion? Is there a second to that motion? That motion dies for a lack of a second. Further motions? Further discussion on item number 16. We've got a motion been made and seconded to approve item 16. Further discussion? See no further discussion? Go ahead.
Yeah. Now we're at the point where we will be voting on the largest bond issue ever for the city of Sioux Falls, $66 million. During the process leading up to this vote, we on the council asked a lot of questions. The citizens of Sioux Falls should know that we did due diligence. We heard many different points of view on the mechanisms of the bond issue, the pros and the cons. And I'd like to thank Rich Lauer, Wally Parkins, Steve Burian, Gene Roanhorse for presenting us with the many different points of view on this issue. Many times on the council, we only get one perspective, but this time around we got many perspectives. I wish the amendments I had introduced would have passed. It would have been good to save the city taxpayers $21.6 million in interest. It would have been good to have competitive bidding. Competition drives down costs. It would have been good to have done away with the risks associated with derivatives. Also, I should mention, it would have been good to have used $16 million from the city's Economic Development Fund, which the council was told would be used for Lewis and Clark, thereby enabling us to lower the bond issue to $50 million and save even more money for the city and taxpayers. All of this is now past history. All we have on the table now is the proposed ordinance to help ensure we get water to Sioux Falls by 2002. Because there are no other alternatives on the table, I will be reluctantly voting for this unnecessarily costly and expensive ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Further comments? Yeah.
I would just note that the amendments that failed on Kermit's suggestion, the ones that would, where the city would incur significant more interest between a 20 versus a 30-year, the first note is that we have the option to prepay our note. I believe it's after 10 years. So in effect, we can make it a 20-year if we so desire. But also, that had we done so, we would have dramatically affected the water rates that we would have needed to charge in the short-term years. And that could have adversely affected many people, including the elderly and low income. Also, regarding the $16 million in the Lewis and Clark EDF, well, I guess it's not a Lewis and Clark EDF fund, it's just an EDF fund. If I have my memory right, $10 million of that has already been spent on Lewis and Clark, and $4.7 million still exists in our budget. And the other $2 million or so was used for water towers and well field expansion.
Okay, others, comments on item 16? We've got a motion been made and seconded. Further comments, Kevin?
Just for the benefit of the public here tonight, I think it's important to understand that your water rates will be going up, and they will be going up not because of this bond issue. It'll be going up because of our commitment to the Lewis and Clark rural water system. This bond issuance is nothing more than how we pay for it and how soon we pay for it. If we don't bond, your water rates will go up dramatically higher and faster than they would now. We're going to spread this cost over a number of years, and more importantly, we're going to spread the cost over users, current users and future users.
Thank you. Further comments? Item 16, we've got a motion been made and seconded. I see no further comments. All in favor of approving item 16 will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no.
Councilmember Costello?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
All members present have voted. Item 16 has been approved 8-0. Item 15.
Item 15 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city by increasing water rates.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. This, too, has also had much discussion and information in the past. The ordinance in front of you is consistent with the recommendations that have been presented with the 30-year for 6 years deferred. And if you have any questions, we also have Steve Burrian here to answer.
Are there questions for Mark?
Yeah, Mark, what is the percent increase this involves? This is for next year, isn't it, basically?
It is for residential users. That would be 12%.
12% for next year's in commercial.
On average, 14%. And industrial is 12%.
And with this increase, how much money will be generated with this increase?
I would have to defer to Steve Burrian.
Steve, do you want to answer that question?
Mayor Munson, members of the City Council, sorry for the pause. I tried to anticipate every question that could be asked, and that wasn't one of them that was at the top of my head. If you remember back to the slides that I presented last Monday, the amount of revenue increase that we anticipate for 2007 under the 20-year deferred principal was approximately $1.4 million.
Okay, that was, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
30 years. Same, it's the,
I wish it was 20.
it's the same, with the deferred principal, it was actually the same amount. 12% increase will result in $1.4 million.
1.4 million.
Approximately.
Additional, okay. Thank you.
Further questions on item number 15? Others that wish to address the council on item number 15? Council discussion or action on item 15?
I move for approval of item number 15. Knutson.
Second, Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh seconded. Further discussion, further comments? See no further comments. All in favor of approving item 15, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Costello?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
All members present have voted. Item 15 has been approved 8-0. Item 17.
Item 17 is a first reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, providing supplemental appropriations for the Opportune Land Acquisition Project.
Mike Cooper, representing Planning and Building Services. Tonight, we're presenting to you a proposal to acquire property in the downtown area of Sioux Falls. And this parcel is located directly west of the downtown main library. The property is located directly west of Dakota Avenue, midpoint between Dakota and Minnesota Avenue. It's located directly north of our parking structure, and it extends north to the business called Studio One. This parcel was the proposed downtown post office site, and the developers of this site some time back finally found out that the post office has made a decision not to enter into this project in the future. The city was approached by the developers with any interest in acquiring this property for future city purposes. So we looked at it, we've talked amongst staff with community development and looking at what future parking needs there might be in this area of downtown. We've talked to Sally Felix, the library director, about what the impact of the library expansion project might be. And we actually have the architects here in town today through Wednesday beginning to look at some preliminary designs for the expansion of the downtown library. And obviously the impact of parking, including the loss of existing parking and the provision of future parking, is going to be a major, will be a major part of the library design. So in talking about the options, we came to Mayor Munson with a recommendation from staff that we felt that this was in the best interest of the city to look at this parcel. And if we could go to the next exhibit, this is a little bit cluttered, but in this exhibit, we have identified in red the property that's currently owned by the city of Sioux Falls, extending at the south end of the Carnegie Town Hall property all the way up north of 3rd Street, which is the most recent acquisition, the Gray Bar building, which will be used for storage. In the blue, we have property that's currently owned by Minnehaha County, which includes primarily the courthouse campus, the museum, and then a parking facility on the south side of 6th Street. So when we look at this whole corridor between Dakota, Minnesota Avenue, over to Main Avenue, it's obvious that as we look into the future, this parcel could have a direct benefit to the city and possibly even to the county in the future, not only for parking, but in the event that there would be a need for another building site in the future. We never know what exactly the future might hold. So this particular parcel is very strategically located midway between the Carnegie City Hall and the courthouse campus that I think would serve both the city and even the county in the future very well. The property is about 45,000 square feet in size, and we don't have an actual layout, but we're estimating that we could probably put surface parking on there of around 110 to 120 parking spaces. And also, I've given out copies to you tonight of an appraisal that the city had done. And if we could put the next slide up there, Steve. The appraisal identified 5 comparable sales to get an idea of what the value of this parcel might be. And these 5 properties ranged in square foot cost from a low of $25.65 to a high of $35.79. And the appraisal that is being recommended for this particular property is in line with the asking price, which would be approximately $30 per square foot or $1.35 million. So we're talking about some very serious money to acquire this property. But again, if we look at this as a very strategic parcel of land that really would provide a lot of options for Sioux Falls city government and possibly county government in the future, surface parking, potentially another building site, or even another parking structure. So tonight is only the first reading, and I'm working again with Randy Bartunik and Sally Felix to put together a little more informational sheet to you to give you more ideas of what the current downtown parking situation is. Community development is also bringing in next month Walker parking consultants that will be looking at the entire downtown area to identify some long-term parking needs. So again, we are recommending to you that this property would be acquired. The funding source will be existing sales tax funds that are available. We will not be taking money from another existing project. We do have money in the sales tax fund that we could use to acquire this property in January of 2007. Any questions at this point?
Questions of Mike on item number 17?
Yes, who initiated this process?
The actual property owner initiated it, yes.
And came to the city?
Yes.
Okay, Bob.
You mentioned the sales tax fund. Is that the land acquisition fund designated in the sales tax fund?
We would be coming to you at second reading with a resolution to amend the CIP to add money into opportune acquisition using sales tax fund.
Gerald?
Mike, if we were to use this property for surface parking, what's the average cost per parking space, if you will, that you would estimate to build that?
I think it's around $3,000. I'm getting some engineering data, which I didn't have ready for tonight, but I would like to do kind of a rough layout of a surface parking lot and give you a better idea of what the cost estimate would be.
And you're guessing, again, between 110 and 125 spaces?
Yes.
Okay.
Bob, does the $3,000 include the cost of the land?
No, that's just for the asphalt and curb and gutter.
Okay, and I was looking at this, Mike. I know you've got 7th Street barricaded off right by its Van Epps Park there. That street, when vacated, was part of the overall scheme for parking as well?
Yes.
Okay, and does the park department have any plans or any ideas about that little Van Epps Park?
Van Epps Park is a little neighborhood park that was gifted to the city back in the 1920s for a rest stop for downtown residents. And it's really, to be very honest, it's really been an underused open space. There are some restrictions on the property with the deed in terms of the donation, but at this point, there are no immediate plans for making any changes to that open space.
Very good, thank you.
Further questions of Mike and 17? Let's go to 18 then.
Item 18 is the first reading and ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances for signage. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
Oh, there he is. Go ahead, Jeff.
Jeffrey Schmidt, representing planning staff on this item. The city put together a sign committee approximately 4 months ago. We've met approximately 6 times on various sign items that are going and will be coming back before Planning Commission and City Council. We're looking at updating different things that are taking place throughout the city and throughout the country. This is one of the items. The sign technology has changed very frequently, specifically in South Dakota, thanks to one of our industries up north in Brookings. And based on that, we've currently looked at changing the sign code that you see in front of you right now. We have come in and redefined some of the existing ordinances that are in place in the zoning code in regards to what an electronic message sign is, stating that it's a sign that is a computer or digital software generated message or other automated or remote method of changing copy. And then trying to, again, helping and working with the industry and the sign contractors to explain what type of sign we will continue to allow in Sioux Falls. It's basically the signs that are in existence, but just putting definitions to the signs that are in place there so that as we continue to proceed forward, there isn't any miscommunication that this sign is illegal or this sign is correct. We've just put it into an ordinance that these are the types of signs that are allowed. Basically defined what blinking and flashing is, what scrolling and traveling is, what fading and dissolving is for signs, and then went into the electronic message signs and said that blinking and flashing will not be allowed, but traveling and dissolving. Gradual movements will still continue to be allowed, which is what they do now, but sudden movements of these electronic signs would not be allowed. If they went into a residential neighborhood, they'd have to have a public hearing on that. Commercial developments, they'd still be allowed. And then again, if they had a public hearing in a residential neighborhood, what would the public hearings have to do? What issues would be raised? And then the last section on that is that electronic message signs would be looked at to minimize the effects of the sign. The sign face may be directed away from the residences, and the brightness and the hours of the operations would be the conditions.
This applies to only electronic message signs?
Correct.
And what do you do with the existing signs that are out there? Do they get grandfathered? Do they fall under this category?
They fall under this category in regards to how they're defined. The types of movement that are within those signs. Again, they're all defined as an electronic message sign, but the type of text that they have on there, again, flashing and blinking's always basically been illegal, but we haven't been able to define it. Now we have a definition for it. Scrolling and traveling, how is that defined? Because again, the technology changed quicker than our ordinances did. So Daktronics was a lot quicker at changing their technology than our wheels moved.
Chairman?
Yeah, Jeff, I'm trying to figure out in this proposed ordinance here, are we getting more regulation or are we getting less regulation? The reason I say that is because we are repealing part of Appendix B. What do you think? Is this greater regulation, more
Less.
regulation? Less regulation?
Correct.
Okay.
Basically, what you're seeing here, Councilmember Staggers, is that in the past, electronic message signs were in the sign code in like 3 different sections, maybe 4 different sections. We've consolidated it into one section and said, this is what an electronic message sign is. Again, there's industry representatives here this evening, and the committees that we've looked through now do not have to go to this section of the code, this section of the code, and this. They can look at one section and go, this is what a sign is. That's it. Now they know.
You said that representative from the industries here?
Correct.
Yeah, I know, but I'd sure like to ask a question.
It's first reading.
You can ask a question first reading. It's first reading.
Yeah.
You can ask a question if you want.
Yeah,
You
if
gotta
I could
direct a question to somebody.
to the industry representative.
I don't know who's here for the.
Good evening. I'm Wade Greenwood. I work for Lamar Outdoor Advertising. As far as answering some of these questions, I don't know if I'm really qualified to on the on-premise issue.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, yes, I do. About
Okay.
blinking and flashing. Is that a real problem?
Once again, what I want to qualify myself that I deal with off-premise billboards. And there's basically, you have on-premise and you have off-premise signs here. I deal basically with, of course, the large billboards. Blinking and flashing, I think one of the main reasons you want to define it and keep it to a minimum is because it does distract people in their cars and everything. You want to be able to get their attention, but at the same time, if they're sitting at a stoplight, you don't want them confused, and basically you don't want Sioux Falls to end up looking like Las Vegas, basically, is the issue. And Jeff has done a very good job. I've sent him a number of sign ordinances from different towns, Mesa, Arizona, Lincoln, Nebraska, just enforced a new one, some people back on the East Coast, Pittsburgh and what have you. And it does a good job of defining exactly what scrolling is, blinking, and that is in your ordinance right now, the proposed one. And it just makes it real definitive. At the meetings I was at on the sign boards when they was discussing this, the representatives from Daktronics were there making it very clear how this worked. The representatives from the companies in Sioux Falls that put up on-premise signs, they were there and very well represented. They gave their thoughts. And it seemed to me everybody was on the same page as that this was a good ordinance for the on-premise. Am I correct, Jeff?
Thank you. Other questions of Jeffrey? Let's go to 19 then.
Item 19 is a first reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city by setting forth a procedure for issuance of conditional use permits for alcoholic beverage establishments. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
This is an amendment to the zoning ordinance that's a follow-up with a council action. And essentially, this does require a conditional use permit for alcohol license permit application.
Questions? Okay, let's go to 20.
Item 20 is a first reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending off-premise sign regulations. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
Now that we continue to proceed forward with a definition for electronic message sign that's in the sign code, and as Wade Greenwood just defined, there's difference between on-premise and off-premise. This is the off-premise section, and now in the off-premise section before, you can see there was this long section in regards to what was allowed and what wasn't, so we've cleaned it up and made it less restrictive to say that blinking or flashing lights are prohibited, but electronic message signs are permitted.
Questions? Okay, let's go to 21.
Item 21 is a first reading rezone an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at northeast corner of 69th Street and Cliff Avenue and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
This property is located in the northeast corner of Cliff and 69th, and the proposed zoning is in conformance with a previous land use amendment that has been approved by the council. The property would be zoned with approximately 16 acres of commercial and approximately 3 acres of office.
Questions on 21, Bob?
Just as a question, Mike, all the campers and stuff that are stored on that property, how do they do that? Or can they do that?
I'm not aware that they are, but if they are, I guess I don't have a good answer for you.
Further questions?
I don't believe that they're being illegally stored, but we can sure look at that.
Further questions of Mike on 21? Let's go to 22.
Item 22 is a first reading rezone, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at the southwest corner of East 57th Street and Greystone Avenue to allow residential development and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
The next two items deal with this particular area of Sioux Falls. Item 22 would change the zoning on the west portion of this site to allow residential development, including single-family twin homes, and it would be a combination as well as of multifamily and office. And so what we're looking at is a combination of both residential, office on the western portion of this site, and this also complies with the land use changes that we've made on the property.
Questions on 22? Okay, 23.
Item 23 is a first reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, a major amendment to Chapter 15.45.070, Plan Development Districts at East 57th Street and Greystone Drive, allowing changes in land use as reflected in the revised sub-area regulations, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
This is the eastern end of the property, which will change the zoning to a planned development, which will give us, as well as surrounding properties, more input into how this property is developed. And the sub-area regulations will provide for multifamily and office uses around a proposed private lake, as well as the second sub-area would be for multifamily residential development.
Questions of Mike on item number 23? Let's go to 24.
Item 24 is a first reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, a major amendment to Chapter 15.45.070, Aspen Hills Plan Development Districts at East Madison Street and North Tahoe Avenue, allowing changes in land use as reflected in the revised sub-area regulations for construction of a single-family residence. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
This property is located on East Madison Street, and it's proposed to be developed into a single-family residence. A number of years ago, when this property was zoned as a planned development as part of the Aspen Hills PD, the developer actually had requested a restriction that there would be no access onto Madison Street. Over time, the area has changed somewhat and has basically been almost totally built out. This is about the last remaining developable property in this area. The current property owner has a proposal for a single-family residence, and they would like to lift that restriction for access onto Madison Street. We had quite a bit of discussion between the surrounding property owners and the applicant on this, and we were actually able to reach an agreement just prior to the Planning Commission hearing with both sides that did agree to allow this restriction to be lifted. So the recommendation to the City Council is to eliminate this access restriction onto Madison Street. And both sides of the issue, as far as the applicant and the adjoining residences to the east, are in support of that amendment.
Questions of Mike on item 24? Let's go to 25.
Item 25 is a first reading rezone, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at Marion Road and West 60th Street and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
This is land that's owned by Sioux Falls Development Foundation. It's approximately 38 acres in size, and the request is to change that for future commercial development.
Questions of Mike on 25? Let's go to 26.
Item 26 is a first reading rezone and ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at 3600 and 3604 South Marion Road and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
This property is just under 1 acre in size. There's a single-family residence on the property. The applicant is proposing to rezone this for a future medical clinic.
Questions of Mike on item 26? Let's go 27.
Item 27 is a first reading rezone and ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at West 26th Street and Katy Avenue to allow a church campus and single-family residential development and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
This property is just over 20 acres in size, and the applicant is proposing to develop this into a church with 8 single-family lots adjoining that property.
Questions of Mike on item 27? 28.
Item 28 is a first reading rezone and ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at 60th Street North and North Kiwanis Avenue to accommodate other land use transitions and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
This property is about 27 acres in size, and it's located directly north of an existing rural residential development called Skyline Heights and east of the Flying J truck stop. This property was previously zoned a number of years ago when the Flying J truck stop was approved for single-family office and commercial. And now the landowner is requesting an amendment to the previous zoning. And we've been working quite closely with the neighborhood to the north on this proposal. We've had staff participated in 2 different neighborhood meetings to reach an agreement on this change. And the property immediately south of the single-family housing would allow medical office, assisted living, a daycare, or townhome dwellings up to 4 units per structure. And the property to the south of this would be allowed to be developed into commercial uses. So this allows for the transition between the existing single-family to office and residential, and then as you go farther south to the commercial development. And again, this proposal has been presented to the surrounding neighbors, and there is a consensus that this can move forward for approval.
Questions of Mike on 28? Let's go 29.
Item 29 is a first reading and ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, a major amendment to Chapter 15.45.070, Planned Development Districts at East 6th Street and North Sycamore Avenue, allowing changes in land use as reflected in the revised sub-area regulations for revised site development plans and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends denial.
This property is part of a proposal that came to us originally for a convenience store, car wash, and senior housing. The convenience store is now under construction, as well as a bank to the south of the convenience store. The car wash is not being proposed to be constructed on this property. So the applicant came to us with a revised proposal for a restaurant use, offices, along with the senior housing. And after reviewing this, the Planning Commission felt that this was not an appropriate location for the restaurant use, but the office and senior housing obviously would be appropriate. So the recommendation was to deny, because at the night of the Planning Commission, we were not offered any other options by the developer. Since that time, staff has been meeting with the developer, or the applicant, and I've given you a handout tonight with a revised proposal that would eliminate the restaurant and essentially would amend the north side of this property to allow offices on the first floor with senior housing up above, and also would allow them to expand this up to 120 units of assisted living, which we believe is a very appropriate development for this particular area, and it still fits in with the original concept that we were given. So at second reading, staff will be bringing that to you as a proposed amendment to this plan, which we are in support of and which the applicant also is presenting as a compromise to the action that did go before the Planning Commission.
Questions of Mike on item number 29, Bob?
Mike, will the Planning Commission's denial, do they have a provision for approving this of some way, or is just the restaurant was the only limiting factor?
That was the only limiting factor, yes.
Kevin?
Mike, will this go back through the Planning Commission?
We would, the request would be to continue bringing it forward just to the council with the amendment.
At what point, well, it would seem to me if they're making a major change like this, that they should repost and allow for public input again.
The change would be they're eliminating the restaurant.
And what are they putting in place of the restaurant?
They're putting in the, if we pull up the site plan. Yep. What they're doing is they're modifying the layout of their site. They're changing the configuration of the elderly housing with a central dining area, which Steve is circling there. And then the section of the building that's on the north end is similar to what the Planning Commission saw, except on that end, instead of a restaurant, it would be more office space.
Further questions on Mike of 29? Okay. Is there a motion to set the hearing date for the second reading for January 2nd for items 17 through 29?
So moved, Jameson.
Jameson moved. Is there a second?
Second, Litz.
Litz seconded. Further comments? Seeing no further comments, all in favor of that motion will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no.
Council members Costello?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
All members present have voted. The hearing date has been set for January 2nd for items 17 through 29. Let's go to 30.
Item 30 is deferred action, a resolution vacating West 22nd Street from South Ellis Road to 457 feet east, proposed South Wheatland Avenue.
Mayor and City Council, the applicant is asked to withdraw this item for consideration.
Okay, it is noted that that item number 30 has been withdrawn. Item 31.
Item 31 is a resolution creating Sioux Falls Tax Increment District 7. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
We have a request to defer items 31 and 32 with consensus by the applicant to January 8th City Council meeting. And the purpose of the deferral is to address questions regarding the tax increment financing plan.
Okay, is there a motion to defer item 31 first to January 8th?
So moved, Brown.
Brown moves. Is there a second?
Second, Costello.
Costello seconded. Further comments on item 31? All in favor of that deferral will vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
Council members Costello?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
All members present voted. Item 31 has been deferred to January 8th. Is there a motion to defer item 32 to January 8th?
So moved, Jameson.
Jameson moved. Is there a second?
Second, Kevin.
Okay. Motion been made. Second to defer item 32. All in favor of that motion vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
Council members Costello?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
That motion has passed. Item 32 will be deferred to January 8th. Item 33.
Item 33 is a resolution approving the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Sioux Falls and Local 814 of the International Association of Firefighters.
Bill O'Toole from Human Resources. This resolution is the collective bargaining agreement with the city and the IAFF Local 814. Just real briefly, this is a 2-year agreement. It represents a 3% cost of living increase for each year of service. And I'll leave my comments at that and answer any questions you might have.
Questions of Bill on item number 33? Others that wish to address the council on item number 33? Council discussion or action on item 33? Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Is that Kavanaugh moves second?
Brown.
Brown seconded, okay. Motion been made, seconded to approve item 33. See no further discussion. All in favor of the motion to approve, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Costello?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
All members present have voted. Item 33 has been approved 8-0. Item 34.
Item 34 is a preliminary subdivision plan, Whispering Woods addition to the City of Sioux Falls, Minnehaha County, 57th Street and Bonson Avenue. The Planning Commission recommends approval with stipulations.
Staff is requesting deferral of both items 34 and 35 to the January 2nd City Council meeting so that we can approve these in conjunction with the rezoning applications for both of these items.
Okay, is there a motion to defer item 34 until January 2nd?
So moved.
Second?
Second, Brown.
Okay, motion been made and seconded to defer item 34 to January 2nd. All in favor of that motion, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Costello?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
All members present have voted. Item 34 has been deferred to January 2nd. Item 35.
Item 35 is preliminary subdivision plan, Talsma addition to the City of Sioux Falls, Minnehaha County, South Dakota, West 26th Street, 1/4 mile west of the TLS Road. Planning Commission recommends approval with a stipulation.
Move to defer to January 2nd.
Second, Kavanaugh.
Okay, motion been made and seconded to defer item 35 to January 2nd. Further comments? Being no further comments, all in favor of that deferral will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no.
Council members Costello?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Benega?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
All members present have voted. Item 35 has been deferred to January 2nd. Now, is there a motion to adjourn?
Just one more brief thing I wanted to bring up. I wanted to commend the University of Sioux Falls football team for winning a second national championship in 10 years, and I wanted the players, the coaching staff, the faculty who had to bend over, and all the people at that school for a job well done.
Thanks. If I could say,
I had sent an email to everyone concerning a personnel issue for an executive session on the 27th of December following the 4 o'clock information. I had forgot that the 4 o'clock information had been canceled. Would you entertain doing that executive session now we have to do an evaluation of Deborah Owen, and I would like to get that done.
well, no. The only thing I was going to do is to commend my colleague Bob Litz for those very kind remarks there. That was all I wanted to do.
Okay. So, the council
Is there anyone interested in doing the executive session now?
I would rather do it justice and have some well-thought-out comments, and I guess I'm not prepared at this time.
Say again?
I would rather do it and have time to make some well-thought-out comments, and I'm not sure that I'm prepared to do that at this time.
And I'm open to that. I don't have a problem with that, but we need to find a time when most people are present to do that.
Does it have to be before the end of the year, or?
It should be.
I think in the past, haven't we provided leadership with written comments? And is that acceptable? Never done it before.
We've never done it.
We've never done it before, and I think that's the interesting part about it. That, we need to establish a precedent of how we're going to handle this in the future. And I have no problem with the written comments. However, I would like everyone to share their thoughts in a public, not in a public, but in a closed session as to how things are going. And if you don't do that in a public environment, I think we're going to lose something. So we're not a public, but an open between the council. Dean.
Just a thought is that maybe, I know I am not going to be here on January 2nd, but I mean, I think Deborah she began on January 4th, and so it would still be within the first year if you would do that on January 2nd. I did have a very good visit with her myself just a few days ago, so that's just a thought as to go into the new year.
I'm open. I'm easier to please, and so. Kevin?
I will be gone as well the 2nd of January. I would think we could go into January, but not far. But if we were to do it perhaps by mid-January.
Okay, so we do it after the first of the year. That I don't have a problem with that. Just so we'll pick a time then the first informational meeting in January that everyone is going to be here, which probably is the 8th. Okay, thank you. Move to adjourn.
If I
Go
could
ahead.
just say one more thing. I heard two of my colleagues saying they will not be here on January 2nd. It's possible I might not be here January 2nd, too. I don't know if anybody else.
We're just barely down to a quorum. We'd be down to 5 people, so
Everything
So,
can happen. As long as we don't have an ordinance, I think we're okay.
yeah, we just have resolutions as 4.
You'll have a lot of ordinances, you'll have all
Yeah.
those rezones.
You could, you know, you could move to defer those too, if you want. You have some.
If you're
Okay,
not going to
so-
have a quorum, are you going to have a quorum? Are we going to have a meeting?
We'll have 5, so we should be, all right. Everybody else is going to be all right, as we know of today. Okay. Any other business to come before the council? If not, James made a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second,
Brown seconded. All in favor will say yes, those opposed, vote no.
Council members Costello.
Yes.
Jameson.
Yes.
Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Knutson. Litz.
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
Benega.
Yep.
Brown.
Yes.
We are adjourned.
I don't know.
You know, I wonder if you turn the on button, I wonder if it went into sleep.
Oh, okay. Maybe it did.
There you go.
Oh, well, hey, thanks, Pat.